Good morning, everyone. This is David, MSOM 601, coming to you today. It's 5 a.m., and I am on the 11th deck of the Celebrity Solstice, and we're coming into Stockholm, Sweden. These are little archipelagos that you have to cruise through that are absolutely stunning. Some of them get incredibly close to the ship, the ship gets incredibly close to them. Um, and let's see, it's May, so the sun is starting to come up. Came up about 4:15 this morning. Went down 9 something. So very long days here, but just a wonderful morning. Wanted to review lesson 4 and then preview lesson 5 for you this week. Okay, lesson 4. Let's start with the discussion board this week that talked about do not sweat the small stuff. Arguably, this is a challenge for me, and it's a challenge for many people in doing this because I think of myself as a big picture type of person where I like to look at um, at really broad types of things, and then when you start getting into the weeds on things, I kind of lose interest very quickly. Um, but nevertheless, one of the key premises here in this discussion board post was that the small stuff is important. And so I always like to think of this. I don't know who said this, if somebody said it or if I just dreamed it this morning. Um, but big pictures are made up of very small images. And so many different small images make up a big picture. So hopefully you had fun with that discussion board question for this week. All right, discussion 2 talked about and presented you with 2 truths. The first truth was a wrong decision is better than no decision at all. Let me talk about that one for a second. I tend to agree with that statement for the only reason that sometimes people have such inaction on things that somebody else who got out there and introduced a new product, maybe it was wrong the first time, but they're able to adapt and have some learning on that mistake that they made and be able to adapt and change it and still beat you to the marketplace. And so there will be somebody still analyzing something and somebody's on the second or third iteration of the product. And so sometimes I think that's an important concept to embrace. Obviously, if you don't learn anything from the mistakes that you have or from the wrong decision, then you've made some tactical errors there. But sometimes it's just good to get moving on things. And the final the truth that you had there was get 80% and then act on it. Very rarely have I found in business, in my experience, that I've been able to get 100% of information before I had to act. And so it's just really critical to make sure that you have the right information, you have the right 80% to act on that particular issue or opportunity. But I just find that it's very rare to get all the information that you need, and sometimes people get hung up, and that's the reason you have the book in this course on analysis paralysis, that people get hung up on analyzing things, and again, they miss the opportunity. So that was lesson 4. Lesson 5 this week talks about the importance of assessing the audience in problem solving. Now, this is really a key one, and part of the reason that I make that statement is my background's in sales management. And before we would go in and talk to anybody on a major project, we always did an assessment of whether the audience was an audience of one or whether the audience was an audience of many. And so it's important to make sure that you look at the audience and also not just look at the audience on who's present, but who is downstream. Because the people who show up are going to communicate to other people in their organization or in their sphere of influence. And so if you only look at the people who are in the audience, then sometimes I think you miss an opportunity. And that's one of the key points I wanted to make here is not only look at the audience who are the obvious people in the audience, but look at the people downstream who will be impacted by the decisions that you present or the information that you present. So the first discussion just talks about the importance of assessing the audience. The second discussion is probably it deals with one of my favorite videos in this course. Um, and it talks about the walk from no to yes and the challenges that are available with people who just don't necessarily like each other. And you may find that quite often in any type of decision that you make, any type of problems that you're solving. And the walk from no to yes is an important concept for you to understand. One of the things that I hope you pull out of this one, I'm not going to give them to you up front, but the speaker on this, who also wrote the book, Walk from No to Yes, and you'll use this book, by the way, if you take the negotiating skills seminar in this degree program, um, has a couple of really neat sayings or phrases in this, and I hope you pull those out as you're going forward. Okay, so that's the second discussion board this week. And then finally, the assignment presents you with a concept that talks about empathy plus sincerity equals persuasion. And here's one of the key things I want to make sure you get in your writing is before you begin to apply things, make sure that you define them first. And so if you're beginning to talk about empathy, you're talking about sincerity, you're talking about persuasion, don't assume that the reader understands what you're talking about. And so always remember this, and you'll see this, that I've written this on your papers in many instances. Define, then apply. And so it's important that you define the terms, the words that you use before you put them in an application. Because if you just begin to start off with an application, the reader may have a different definition, and it's not a clear understanding for you. Okay? That is lesson 5 coming up. So we're more than halfway through the course, and hope you're having a good time. Want to make sure that you study hard this week, and if you have any questions or comments, make sure that you contact me. Okay? Have a great week. Chat with you soon.